project started in 2018. We had an event on Halloween, and that was actually our start date. It turns out that the project founders actually came together about a year before, and it was on another project. And it was in that other project that we really came to a conclusion that it would be best for us if we started our own project. We did fork their blockchain technology, but we didn't fork their blockchain. There's various reasons for that. This isn't the presentation for that. We can talk later if you want to hear about that story. But the situation was we took their blockchain technology and we went ahead and forked it. But what we did is we started over at Genesis with our own emission schedule and the ability to really set the future of the project from ground zero, not starting 3-4 years on. We split this thing off and decided to do our own thing primarily because we were product focused, and the project we left was really more ethos focused. They were all about the decentralized, permissionless, storage needs to be out there to keep people from being deplatformed. That was really, the primary thing. And anybody who came and really tried to develop a product on top of it really ran into some challenges and so forth. And we just sort of said, products are really where it's at. So let's go do this thing. And we will, really focus on building the best S3 cloud storage. So we started in 2018, as I said, and things went forward. We started doing presentations for various people. And this slide shows up in almost every presentation that we've ever did in some form, flavor, or another. But if you look at that chart, 2025 is just around the corner, and that's just the first bar that really finally starts to take off. It isn't really for a couple of years before we get that crazy run up in storage need that's going to really demand, that we have a big performant, really operable network in hand. And so I've never really been all that concerned that we haven't got storage yet. And I'll talk a little bit about why we haven't got storage in this presentation and what we're doing about it and, what I think is going to happen. But again, we should expect the 2025 forward to be really powerful and positive for us. If you talk to people in the real world, a lot of them are not very supportive of crypto, right? In the end, when you talk to a lot of technologists, you talk to people that do this, that need this kind of product and so forth, a lot of them have this attitude, a database or a spreadsheet would do it just as good as a blockchain, right? And to be frank about it, I tend to agree with that for like 80, maybe 90% of the stuff I see in blockchain and crypto today. I don't want to slam any specific projects, but for the most part, there's only a few things that really avail themselves of blockchain, and storage is one of them. Cloud services is one of them. When we go out and talk to potential customers, that's a big hurdle that we have to get over. The way you get over it is really sustained marketing into that world, which we just haven't been able to do yet financially. It should happen in 2025 for us. We're starting to see a number of things happen in the real world that will, I think, start to cause people to look at that ethos and to realize that this might be a better direction for things. So in that regard, we're fine with the ethos. We're fine with how that kind of goes. In our case, though, what you're going to see throughout the project is me referencing things where we believe we're just better than the real world products, right? Not on a decentralized necessary basis, but on a distributed basis, on a performance basis, on a security basis, on a durability basis. Across the board, we believe that our product is the way this sort of cloud storage services ought to really be designed. And we think the market actually agrees with us on that, by the way. It takes Amazon $600 million to sync a building, right? A bunch of tax credits in whatever locality they're in, and they're only going to sync these things in localities that are close to a lot of population. So, they can't really do the decentralization thing. They can't really do wide distribution until they start adopting smaller, closer to the edge type, installations. Well, we're already starting to see that. We're seeing it with, people like Cloudflare, Switch. puts these, like shipping container server farms out in various places to bring the edge, close. And so there's already this movement towards the edge as we kind of move forward. We're just the radical edge, right? When we talk about, thousands of nodes that live in offices and homes with an average of 25 terabytes of capacity provided, we're talking about the radical edge. And our goal for this project ultimately is to have 400 to 600,000 nodes scattered around the globe over the course next 3 to 5 years. So that's what we're really targeting right now. A lot of these big data center installations are having a problem getting approvals for installs because they use so much power. And so, for instance, when they go and look for specific, things from the municipalities to give them, special power permitting so that they can absorb and take over a lot of the power in the location, they're running into problems with that. And I don't think that's going to end. And one of the problems with a big data center, by the way, is that not only do you have this big footprint for energy usage for the stuff, right? The GPUs, the servers, everything that goes on there, but you typically have a 1x doubling of all of that power usage just to provide cooling and to provide the environment needed to keep the equipment in the traditional data centers operational. Then on top of it, you got all the stuff, where you got people that have to drive to the facility to work 24/7. You've got all the additional things. There's a lot of water usage to keep the cooling in place. So it just really isn't a good model when you get right down to it. All right, so I'm going to run through all these things, and if there's any questions, you can post them in the YouTube chat or in the Discord chat, and we'll get to them at the tail end of the presentation. At the core of all this, as I said, is a blockchain. It's been running now for 6 solid years. We've had essentially 0 issues with the blockchain. There's been a couple of times where we've had some security concerns, but other than that, the chain has operated pretty flawlessly and so forth. All of that, connectioning that we did in the beginning worked out as planned. We didn't really even run a test net to launch the thing, and it just sort of worked. So a lot of people don't really think about the blockchain much when they think about our project, and it's because it's this purpose-built thing that only works for ScPrime, right? It's not like Solana or, the Ethereum virtual machine or, any other project out there that's really trying to be sort of a world computer, right? It is a very purpose-built, specialized blockchain. And that allows us a lot of stuff. First of all, it allows us performance that we never have to worry about. It allows us fees that we never have to worry about. The fees are very low because there's not going to be transactioning on the network from people that are running, millions of meme distribution or things like that would get in the way of it. So at the end of the day, this is a pretty good strategy. And there is a case to be made that we don't leave this, that we stay here forever, right? We've said all along that we think we're going to become a little more agnostic and move our dApps up to other chains like Solana, maybe to Base. But at the end of the day, there is a solid case to stay on our own blockchain. On our blockchain right now, there are a couple of mining pools. There's DX Pool and there's ScPrime Pool. These have been really good mining pool folks for us. And then the blockchain is validated with specialized computers called ASICs. And right now, the Blake 256 algorithm drives our blockchain, and the only miner that is compatible with it right now is the Bitmain DR7. We have a relationship directly with Bitmain. We, chat with them from time to time. So far, that DR7 has not been publicly launched. I think that might be a surprise to some people here. But the DR7 was only sold in a very small bespoke batch to our community. And so our community right now is pretty decentralized on the DR7, and they are providing all of the security. You can't go out and buy more DR7s, so there's no real way right now to 51 this network. You could, if you were a Bitmain, potentially do it, but of course that they would leave a lot of fingerprints if they did, and so that really isn't a thing. So that's the situation there. I don't have any information today on when the next batch of DR7s, or the first batch when the product will actually launch to the general public. But I sort of suspect it's going to be tied to this crypto cycle we're in and the bull market we're in. So we'll see how that goes forward. So baked into the project itself, and we'll talk about it right after this, is the Daemon that controls everything. And there is wallet architecture, a wallet module that is built into that. And we pulled that over from the project that we forked from. So there are some of those components that form the core parts of the project that we brought over from those folks. But part of what we decided to do was we decided to sort of build our own versions of those, right? And the first, or one of the first that we did that is different from the original wallets, is this WebWallet. And the WebWallets perform really good for us. It runs very performantly, runs in a browser, and it provides some things that I've found to be really sort of helpful to me. In this case, you can see there's actually a DR7 running on this account. But one of the things that I really like about the web wallet is you can put notes next to transactions. And the neat thing that we did with this is you can import, export the notes and take them over to other computers and put them on other computers that are running this same, web wallet and so forth. The notes themselves are not baked into the blocks. We're not taking up block space. We're not adding them as, extra data in blocks. They are just this metadata that lives on the computer that you're operating on. And I think that's really valuable here because some of this stuff is, private information that I want to keep for myself that I don't necessarily want to share with the rest of the world. So I think that's really a neat feature. We also did a neat feature in here, which is multi-send coins, which allows you to grab a spreadsheet and you can put in hundreds of different addresses and amounts and even coin types, right? You can send multiple coin types in the same multi-send to a bunch of different people. This is really powerful. And if you've not had any need to use this, you might think about looking at it and think about reasons why you might use it. But it's really powerful for the project because it allows us to do various distributions and so forth. So that's been really helpful to us here. You'll notice that in here, everything is tied with a link, and we'll talk about the Explorer in just a second. And then, of course, the last thing that the web wallet really does, really valuable for us, is it has this connection to this thing called transporter. And the transporter is really nice because what the transporter does is it allows us to connect two other blockchains. And in the current case right now, the other blockchain that we're currently connected to is Solana. And what this is, it's not really a decentralized bridge. It's not a custodial bridge. It's sort of somewhere in the middle of that, right? We don't hold your coins, so there's no custodian in there. You don't have to worry about, assets being lost when they get sent into the bridge. What happens is when tokens get sent to the bridge, they get burned, destroyed on this chain. And then they materialize on the other side as Solana tokens. And so we've set a limit to how many can go, obviously, because we need to have coins on this side, long term, in order to fulfill our contract obligations and so forth. But at the end of the day, we have this bridge to the other, chain. We are now starting to look at chains like Base, some of the other EVM, some of the places where people might want to trade our coins and to have access to them. And of course, if we get into the place where we do decide to run our applications on top of those chains, then ultimately we'll already have the coins over there ready to do it, and we'll be able to connect them in and so forth. So that's the transporter. That's our version of the bridge. And what you do is you just, when you want to connect a wallet, you just tell it which Solana wallet you want to connect, and then it'll bring up the typical little Solana message up there for Phantom, and you can, or Solana or Soulflare or whatever you have, and it will allow you to connect up. We'll talk a little bit further about Solana later on. Okay, so that's the web wallet. The Explorer is interesting because the Explorer has been around with us now for a number of years. It was operated by another individual outside of the project for a lot of years. But at the end of the day, the Explorer itself got scooped up by us so that we could maintain it. But the thing about it is it's really not had any revisions or updates for, I mean, got to be on maybe a year, year and a half. It doesn't really need all that much. I mean, it does a really good job for searching for transactions, for seeing blocks, for really getting down in there. There's some things about the blockchain and the way that contracting works on our blockchain that really makes it a little different to sort of, walk the chain to chase transactions. There's a defrag process that happens with unique new addresses every time there's a defrag. And so consequently, when you want to walk a transaction, if it's a transaction from some time ago, it could literally take you an hour just to keep clicking the links to go back and walk the chain all the way down. So there's some really important needed things that we need to build into the Explorer to make it a little bit easier to traverse the blockchain and to go back into history and sort of do forensic work on it and understand what's going on. But by and large, it's been a good tool for us. It is baked into several programs that we use, like the WebWallet, also like the XMiner storage node that we use and so forth. I suspect that in early 2025, we will probably get around finally to doing an update on the Explorer. So the Daemon isn't something most people interface with directly too much. If you set up a full license, you're well aware of it. It's SPD. It's the piece that runs sort of underneath. What it really does, its main purpose and functionality is to connect all of the peer-to-peer gossip network together of the host providers, you guys, the storage providers, and what are called renters on our network, which ultimately are the people running the relayer, which we will talk about later on in the presentation as well. The way that the software for the Daemon and the blockchain and everything was originally architected, there's a lot of other modules that are baked into that. There's the host module, the storage provider module, which provides the very basic components of announcements and the provider ID, what we call the pub key and so forth. So all of that's in there as a module. There is a renter module. We actually use something different. We don't use that. There is a mining module in there. We wrote our own mining module because of the new algo and the stuff that's going on. There are a few other things in there that operate, but we don't end up using it all very much. Then there's the storage providers, and the storage providers really, are this sort of first foundational wave of the project. So that's our situation with storage providers. We'll talk a little bit further about storage providers and examiners when we get to that website. This is probably due for an update. This got redone on a graphics basis. I think it was probably going on now about 18 months. So it's getting a little long in the tooth and a little tired. And, a couple of weeks goes by and I always hear from folks about, what's wrong with the websites and so forth. So that's a thing that's probably coming. But for people that are here for the project and really looking to understand the project, everything's here that you need. You can find out about the tokenomics of the project. You can understand how the 2 coins that we have on the project work. You can find out the historical information about how they came to be, how many of them there are at any given time. You can look at various things like the supply curve in real time and see a Grafana representation of it. You can do all kinds of things here to understand the tokens. You can also get information about virtually every other part of the project relative to the cryptocurrency project side of the house, right? The storage providers, the transporter, blockchain stuff. You can find information about the team. You can get KPIs about the project. So this really is your one-stop shop to learn about the project. If you have ideas about the website that you think it needs and so forth, you should definitely come and talk to us. The last thing I'll say about the website is that there's a link here to the project timeline. It talks about what's coming, going forward. It does have the historical stuff, so if you want to go back and kind of see what we've done, there's quite a bit of work that's been done along the way to get here. And now we're in this place at the end of 2024, 2025, and we still have a lot of work to do, right? So while I say we're ready for real S3 cloud storage customers, the truth of the matter is that we will get customers that will come aboard and they will start to ask questions about things that they wish and hope for that we could do on the network, and some of those things are not quite done yet. Some of those things are storage provider things as well. So there's some definitive things that we're working on that will show up over the next several months that I think are going to be really powerful and really fun and so forth. One is shared relayers, shared databases for relayers, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so that's that. So that's really the whole, ScPrime world, right? And it's important to sort of understand that we really have divided this project up. If you come into the project and you're from the crypto side of the house, you're coming into ScPrime. And ScPrime is the blockchain. It's all of the stuff on this page. It's the host side of the house, the storage provider network, and all of that sort of stuff. The other thing it is it's a pair of tokens. The blockchain ASIC miners that validate the blockchain and validate blocks throw off a cryptocurrency called SCP. And one of the big ethos type things that we did from the beginning was we said right out of the gate, our goal, our dream, our desire here is not to reinvent money. You can swap it for other cryptos, yes, but it is not a token built for anything other than working inside of our ecosystem. And so one of the things that we are about to release shortly is this thing we've been talking about for a long time, which is Pay with SCP. And it'll allow the customers of our project to actually use SCP to actually pay for storage. So when you buy SCP to have in your own wallet, you're really buying terabytes on our network. And that's important because if you buy terabytes today for X number of SCP, it's quite potentially possible that as the coin appreciates, as more people come to know about our project, and as there becomes more value driven into the project, that the terabytes that you bought today will be worth a different value. So let's say you buy 100 SCP today, and maybe 100 SCP today can only buy 2 terabytes, but then the value of SCP goes up 2 times or 3 times or 4 times, and it's very, very undervalued to a lot of our peers in the cryptocurrency space. And because of that, it's quite possible that in the near future, you will look at your wallet and realize, oh, hey, when I bought these SCPs, I could buy 2 terabytes, but today I can buy 50 terabytes. So Pay with SCP is a thing that's going to be coming very shortly. We had to get a thing done where we moved our payment rails over into an e-commerce solution. That's almost completed, and we'll have an announcement on that probably in the next week or two. And then we will move forward with Pay with SCP as well as a number of other kinds of payment rails. D2X is an incentives token. I'm not going to get into it too much right here. It's not the same thing as SCP. It is a token that lives on the blockchain. It is a rent-seeking token. It has never been sold to the public by the team or the project. They have been given away to investors, mostly to accredited investors. So again, we did a lot of work to not run afoul of like the SEC or any of the weird regulatory stuff that's been going on over the last couple of years in the project. The truth of the matter is a lot of that guardrailing just sort of went away. And we think that the next year to 2 years is going to be pretty fruitful for people that want to do things like use D2X for various features and components and not have to worry as much as we've had to worry in the past. The real truth is we need, in the USA at least, the legislature to make those rules. And I think as those rules become more fleshed out, we're going to have a pretty good run with this token and the ability to do some pretty cool things. With a state channel contract, the way it operates on our network, one party contracts with another party to purchase a certain amount of storage for a certain period of time and promises to pay with that cryptocurrency SCP that we talked about. There is a forming contract transaction. So when you first have that contract formed between the renter and the host, the transaction is shut off. It shows the contract fee that was paid, and then that goes on to the blockchain, and the public can validate it and see very clearly that this transaction took place. Then, when it's all said and done and the contract is completed, there is a second transaction that takes place. And that transaction is kind of a cleanup transaction. What it does is it looks to see, what's been done, any revisions, all of the sort of stuff that's happened along the way. It cleans it up and prints a transaction to the blockchain, memorializing all of that, makes it public, can be validated by anybody that looks for it. And then there is a renewal contract transaction at the very end for the third and final before another contract ultimately is formed and carries forward. The contract transaction formation is done, and there's X amount of coins that are locked into the transaction. Like, I wish to purchase, 2 terabytes of storage, and well, at current pricing, that's going to be this much, and the contract, determines and puts that much into a output, and it's locked up for the duration of the contract. And on the other side of the contract, as a sort of insurance for the contract, the host also puts up an equal amount. We call that collateral, and then that gets locked into the contract. And so those two things sit there on outputs. We have a UTXO blockchain. Money goes from one output to the other throughout the duration of the contract period. The only people that can see them are the people that have the wallets of the two sides of the contract. Little tiny microtransactions are happening all the time. As anything happens on the contract, money transfers over from one output to the other output until that closing revision transaction that ultimately says, okay, did everything happen the way it was supposed to happen? And if the answer is yes, then that money is memorialized on the other output, your output. You get to keep the money, and then, ultimately it shows up in your wallet. If ultimately you didn't do your job and you were not holding the storage that you said you did, the funds would not go back to the original output, because that's somewhat of an attack vector. What would happen instead is the funds would be burned, both your collateral and the funds from the renter. They would both go into a burn address and be lost forever. So it doesn't really provide for a very easy accounting. You can't really see what's going on while it's going on. We do need to do some work there to make that process just a little bit better. Because it is the state channel contract on a peer-to-peer network, we don't require any oracles or validators. In some ways, it makes for a very robust contracting because it can be very fast. It is the only contracting that takes place on our blockchain. There isn't contracts for, some game. There isn't contracts for memes. There isn't contracts for other things. It's just this contract, and it performs this one function, which means that we can go a long ways, maybe 300, 500,000 storage providers before we even potentially begin to start to see blockchain bloat or, some of the performance issues. That's where a purpose-built blockchain really comes into play, and where I think can do a great job. This is the familiar device that you guys are all used to, called the Examiner. Some of you have Examiner full license. All that stuff I just talked about, all that, financialization, the contracting, the transactioning that happens, all of the various information that we have built into that side of the house all shows up in this device that we've built. Your wallet, the income that you've earned. When you start having month-over-month contracts and so forth, then it all shows up. It's getting a little bit better and giving you the ability for taxes and so forth to see it in here. That's a really important component. And the examiners are going to be really this 300,000, 500,000 node sort of thing. So right now, inside of the network, we have built a product on top of all of this. And this application is called XNSD2, right? This is our storage service that we sell to customers directly. Some people develop dApps and apps that just, people can just use permissionlessly, or some dApps are actually just little utilities. But this is a full-fledged compatibility suite with S3 Cloud. It allows us to provision to potential customers a device, and they take that device and it allows them to connect up to the cloud and then start, uploading their data to the cloud and having a billable record that follows behind that. Well, there's a lot of components that go into that aren't exactly clear to everybody how it's all working. So I'm going to cover all that today right here, and we'll get through it pretty quickly. It's what we have are relayers, and the relayer is a satellite that's run by the end customer, and that is a big difference. The thing that's missing, though, is the contractor. Where's the contractor? Well, the contractor is centralized in our case, and it's called Conductor. We run a big Kafka cluster, which essentially is built to scale almost infinitely so that we can handle contracting with 500,000 providers out there in the world, and potentially tens of thousands of Relayer customers as they come along. That centralized contractor now provides a couple of things for us. First of all, it does memorialize everything to the blockchain. If you host a contract and at the end of the contract you did your job correctly and you got paid, you can go back and look at it on the blockchain and you can see both sides of it. So it is verifiable. We've got people all over the world, and you're going to be setting up these nodes. DPINs are special because I can put a node way out in the middle of nowhere where I make a deal with that provider, and in the end, they provide storage and it's localized. The chief benefit that we perceive in running a blockchain-based project, other than the just generic distribution that puts the storage close to the users, we disintermediate a whole bunch of people. Bankers, they're lawyers, they're accountants, they're all of those people that really make for that middle bureaucracy inside of any, normal product, like Uber, for instance, right? Or Airbnb, or any of those kinds of things. They all have those people. And right now we can build out and we can grow into those areas without any interference, without any issues. And it's one-to-one. It just goes direct to the users. So that's really powerful. In the future, Conductor will ultimately be provisioned out in individual relayers for people that want it, right? They don't have to use crypto. In fact, they don't have to know that there's crypto involved. They don't have to care about crypto one way or the other. They take a relayer and they set up their storage provisioning to go out to the cloud, and they do their normal work. They use VM or they use whatever tool they're going to use, and they pay with dollars, or they pay with PayPal, or they pay with whatever they end up needing to pay with. I think that there will be customers that will come along that will want to buy and purchase crypto, plug it into these relayers themselves, and have a complete self-service environment that is permissionless and decentralized. Then on top, there's this thing called the relayer. The relayer really does return something that's really valuable to the customers, and that's control. And that control allows them to make something that we're calling a virtual private data center. When a customer comes aboard, they're going to take one of these relayers. And relayers, you can build your own and stand up on a simple Linux machine, or you can buy a device. You go out and choose the storage provider set. You can choose based on performance. You can choose based on durability. You can choose based on uptime. You can choose based on a number of things today. And in the future, you're going to be able to choose using durability in such a way that machine learning on the back end is actually deciding which are the best providers to provide you with good long-term durability of your assets. I.e., that if you upload something today, the data rot is not going to take it down 3, 5, 6, 8 years from now. It'll still be there. It'll still be downloadable and retrievable. We'll also have the ability for people to go in and using AIs to help determine the best provider set based on a query that you enter in. This is really what I want my virtual private data center to look like. It needs to have this performance level. It needs to have this durability. It needs to have this uptime, blah, blah, blah. And then you pull that together. So it really is building your own data center, which is really powerful. The customer takes the relayer, plugs in various devices or software or information. This stuff goes into the various applications that are S3 compatible, or if they're not S3 compatible, that shed off the data into a directory that can then be uploaded into an S3 bucket. That stuff is all sent across to the gateway with the metadata going off into a database that the customer keeps and backs up on their end. It starts out getting sharded into chunks first, then the individual chunks are encrypted, and then those are all uploaded as indexed rows to 120 providers, 80 of which are actual data, 40 which are parity pieces today. That's our erasure coding. That erasure code ratio is a little high today, but we do that just to ensure the durability. As time goes by, we expect that that ratio will drop. So that's what happens. And all that stuff is done at the client side. By the way, all that stuff gets done at Amazon, right? You upload to an Amazon data center. First thing they do is they send a copy to another data center. So it's in two places. If it's already encrypted, they may apply additional encryption if you tell them to. So you can set the encryption at least on the client side. A lot of people don't, by the way. A lot of the data that's sitting in these data centers is unencrypted. They take your data and they do erasure coding at the facility, and that splits it up to thousands of servers. But like we could have a war take out one data center, and we could have a flood take out the second data center, and all of your data is lost. Which really should just say, we provide a mirror copy of your data at a second location. If you want to pay for a third one, we'll do that too. On the relayer, and like I said, we're not going to go through this in any kind of really significant detail, but you can actually, download and run a relayer easily. You don't have to pay anything. Everything is baked into the relayer to give you a true S3 compatible experience. We have this capability to build buckets, start to upload files directly into buckets. We can do that directly from the relayer. If we've set up something like Samba SMB network shares, we can use simple CLI, rclone. We can do all kinds of different S3 things directly there. Or we can use big applications like Veeam and Commvault and various DAM software. A lot of the new surveillance stuff, the VMS software is S3 compatible. So you create your buckets, you then report the name back to the bucket to the S3 compatible software, and you're able to go. You can go in just like on S3 on AWS or other clouds. You can build significant and sophisticated identity and access management. You can have different kinds of users doing different kinds of work with different permissions to various cloud assets. You can set up groups. You can assign policies to the groups, read only, write, read and write, and so forth. So you have a very robust capability in here to do a very serious S3 type work. And by the way, on the XNS website, there is a certification training course you can take to become a cloud provisioner on our cloud, same as there is for AWS and Google and so forth. Remembering what I talked about as far as the provider profiles, just going to touch on this briefly. This is not the map we ultimately intend to use. This map does work. I am actually choosing providers right now, and if I go back, it's going to change the provider set that I have on my dashboard. This will take a few minutes, but ultimately it will come back and it will match the set that I just chose. I can create my own profiles in that screen, and that's how I create my virtual private data center. There are a lot of additional features here. So if you have various kinds of capacity, internet capability, performance, big pipe, little pipe, whatever, you have a lot of processor, you have decent enough RAM. There are a lot of configuration options you can go in here and look at and change to actually provide really robust, very dialed in stuff. But what we've done is we've set up the default setting for the lion's share of customers who just have a good, generic, decent, meets minimum specs type relayer set up. So the relayer is that device that you set up that connects up to the cloud. It's the device that actually builds the data center and sets up the number of providers you're going to connect to. And then the customer connects up the S3 applications that they typically use today with Amazon or Google or Microsoft or whatever, and then they use those standard applications. That's really important to understand about how all this works, because what we've done is we didn't set up our own protocol like IPFS or some of these other things. What we've said is we believe that the world has chosen S3 by AWS. It is an open protocol. But we believe that the world believes in it. There's millions and millions and millions of terabytes out there already stored on it. There's all kinds of 50, 60, 100,000 applications I don't even know today that have been written for S3 that are all compatible now with our unit. So it's really a very important component that's baked in to our application set and our suite. So that's the relayer. So on the XNS website, this is pretty traditional for a cloud service site. You really don't see much here on the website itself until you actually sign in and sign up. Basically, everything on the XNS website is about teaching you how it works and how to use it and so forth. You can sign up to be a partner as well, and you can also get pricing here. But the real key to the XNS website is to go to this resources page. You can go to the Learn section. This is where we have the certification that you can take to become a cloud provisioner. You'll get a little medallion that you can stamp if you're an MSP or a CSP on your website. It's a pretty significant course that you can go through, and you can learn about how everything works. And I highly recommend it to storage providers because it's always good to know about our network and what we're doing. If you are somebody that already has S3 applications running somewhere else, we've set up a whole bunch of different ones that we show you sort of how the configuration goes on it, so you can quickly just run through and figure out how to set it up, right? And what you can do is you can look at these and understand how they work so that if you have a different application that we haven't done, you can just look at this and say, okay, so probably I'm going to need to do this for the URL, or I'm going to need to do certain settings here, and it'll be a good little sort of template to help you kind of get going on that. Also here, and also on all of our websites, if you go to documentation, we've set up very specific documents that are useful for you if you're at this website specifically. So in this case, there's relayer set up and troubleshooting and various things that happen there. examiner.net is a website that exists. And on the examiner.net website, you have the ability to purchase devices for our network. Previously, this was the only device you could purchase, right? Or you could purchase licenses. Now, this is the only device for Examiner only that you could purchase on this website. So it was primarily for storage providers only. The other thing about this site now is that it allows you to purchase this device, which is the RelayerXM. It puts both an Examiner and a relayer into the same device. So it's the device that you use to actually access the network, and it's a device that you use to provision storage on the network. It's not tied to that box, right? It isn't tied to the box that has all of this really nice connectivity in it, right? This is just a really good box. Right? It's small, it's compact, it's not that expensive, and it's very powerful. It has very fast networking on it. It has a lot of different networking options on it. So it's just a really good device. You don't have to use that device to run relayers and to run Examiners, and we don't have to use that device to sell the whole thing as this RelayerXM. In fact, in the future, I expect that we will have rack mounts. We'll have 1, 2, and 4 U's. We'll have big devices. We'll have devices that look a lot like Cloudian type, scenarios. There'll be big NAS-like things. that will essentially allow SMEs and enterprises to do a great job of using the relayer as a sort of centralized point in their organization for data collection before it gets divided and split up to the cloud. We are working on things like cache provisioning so that ultimately we can have a special ransomware section. We're working on cache persistence so that stuff will always stay in cache, even if it does get uploaded to the network. Currently, it operates on a FIFO basis. If you upload something to the relayer, what happens is it stays in cache until the cache is filled up, and then ultimately, first in, first out, it gets deleted from your localized version, and then it's only on the cloud itself and so forth. So that's the deal. We expect that we will have a lot of different RelayerXMs that will go out into the world ultimately. And this device is really cool. You can do a lot of really cool things with the RelayerXM. One thing that we can do on it is we can have these add-ons. And add-ons allow us to provide a lot of really cool additional functionality very easily to this environment. So for instance, those things I talked about earlier, the WebWallet, for instance, or the Explorer, or things along those lines. We can put Portainer in there to provide a graphical, access to Docker containers that are running all of this stuff. We have this SMB network share, which I don't actually have open right here because I rebooted my computer, but the SMB network share allows you to just build a shared network drive directly, very easily, one button click, and then ultimately you can just drag and drop stuff into that folder, and everything that's in that folder gets uploaded to the cloud. So if you're somebody that's buying this just for the examiner, but you want to upload some data to the cloud, personal data or whatever, it's really very simple, and you don't have to learn or use any S3 applications at all. You can just use localized shared drives and get stuff uploaded to the network. We expect this repository to grow significantly over the coming years, and we expect there to be community submitted add-ons, and we expect there to be a lot of interesting little different add-ons that are there. This live provider map is going to be the provider map that shows up when you're doing virtual private data center creationing and so forth. Right now, it's not this. This is a live map. This actually is a real map. If I go in here and I click on a node, this is a real one of you, right? This is one of your nodes. It tells me real live stuff. It's fetching actual history from your node. And this is stuff that's public today that people can go out and see our live network. This whole piece, as well as some of the other provider selectioning tools, as well as some of the other stuff, is all going to get wrapped and moved into this. And this is the last thing I want to show. This is the console. And the console is a really cool part of our process, but it's still a part that's very much not fleshed out yet. There's still a lot of work to do here. And yeah, I could understand if somebody said, oh my gosh, so much of this stuff still needs to be done. I'm not going to put storage on your cloud because of that. There's really nothing that's left to do that would discourage you from actually using the cloud. Everything that we want to do in here is all about providing easier use, making it slicker, tying things more closely together, making more functionality. Everything that you need to do is in here today. But you can look at various things that are in here. You have a wallet in here. You have, your licenses and so forth. But what's missing? What's missing are your relayers. What's missing are your examiners, right? And so what we really want to do, and what we've been working on over the last year, is we've been getting everything, put into a WebSocket capability so that we can provide remote access to everything on our network. This will ultimately become your master control panel. You won't be going into individual web pages for the devices that are on your network. You'll come here and you'll go in and you'll see all of your devices over on the left-hand side, and you'll click on something like an examiner, and that examiner will then pop up over here in the right-hand side, and you'll be able to work on it from anywhere. You'll have SSO login, obviously, for privacy and for security with two-factor and the whole nine on that. So you won't have to worry about security and all that. The SSO is there right now, so it's not like you don't have that. You do have that. But when you have the ability to remote in, you want to definitely make sure you have it so that you're not, exposing any of your assets to the public and to the world and so forth. But that's coming. And remote access is something that's really not too far away now because we made that WebSocket capability in all the other tools, right? So once we have that together, this whole network will flesh out even more. We'll start to fill these things in. These are just meant to be buttons. There's a lot of KPI stuff that we plan to have in here and just general stuff that you can go through and search and look at various kinds of things, like looking at your invoices or, so forth and such. So that's the console, and that piece is probably the piece that's still the furthest out from really, having the full vision fulfilled of what we want to do. But I think it won't take very long for us to get that done. This whole idea with DPIN, we just called it utility back in the day. We didn't have a name for it. It was utility. We built stuff that actually did something, right? That was the whole sort of notion. But we always understood this flywheel. We always understood that everything is sort of conducive to everything else, and that as it starts to ramp up, it just builds on itself and grows. And I really want to convey that to you guys because I think sometimes it's lost on our community specifically because you're the foundation piece. So now you're waiting for, the storage piece to come aboard, or you're waiting for some additional thing to happen, right? Coin price to go up or whatever, in order for the thing to happen. And I believe all of those things are going to happen, obviously. That's the we're not leaving gift that I showed earlier, right? And it could take a little more time. It could take a little bit more before we get to that place where we really can show you the money and so forth of, storage on the network. But it's a flywheel. So you have a vested stake in seeing that same thing happen, in helping bring somebody across the transom and say, hey, I want you to meet these guys. They run X and S. They have cloud services that you guys use for backup in your organization. Just talk to them. See if you can find a fit. And if it works, I think they're going to give you some free storage. Try it out. I'm running a host on the network, so you know me, so blah, blah, blah. It's really powerful and important right now to bring anybody and everybody into the project. Yes, we have to find the funding to do the marketing, to do the work, to get, these people. We're working that angle. We've always worked that angle. And I believe that we are very much on the cusp of that happening in a big way with 2025. Potentially, if coin price goes up, we get all of the other resourcing we need that causes this flywheel to start spinning, allows us to do the kind of marketing and subsidization that will get the right customers aboard. Once we start seeing more storage on the network, more providers will come and buy RelayerXMs or Examiners. Once we start seeing more of that sort of stuff, we'll have more money. We can buy more marketing. As we get the flywheel spinning, you can really start to see that this thing just feeds on itself. The last thing I'm going to say is something that I've talked about to a number of investor types, but maybe you guys don't quite grasp it. We don't actually make money off storage. That's not the thing for us, right? Once we do get a bunch of storage on the network, we don't make money off the storage. You make all that money. All that money goes to you, right? How do we make money? We made money by selling these nodes, the licensed nodes. All the nodes that you put on the network you paid us for was what caused us to be able to do all this amazing development, right? And to build this thing out. And as we go forward, one of the big unfair advantages we're going to have over Jeff Bezos is that when he goes out to put a data center in for $600 million, it takes, however long, 6-8 months, whatever, and costs him all that CapEx. Essentially what happens is the 100,000 people that are going to come along and set up providers on our network are going to be paying us to set up the network. It will allow us to drive ever more significant efforts in the marketing and development and compatibility and training and tutorializing and all of that really important stuff to keep the network healthy and growing. In regards to getting paid off the storage, there we do pull some dollars back, but it's more of a rebate than it is anything. We overpay for the storage and then we get some back. And that's that D2X incentives token. 15% of every storage contract is pulled out off the blockchain by the blockchain and distributed automatically to the holders of that D2X token. So as we start getting storage on the network, and as there starts being these flywheels spinning and more providers and more of everything, what happens is more and more dollars are going to be accruing to those D2X incentive tokens in the form of SCP. Currently, you can transport bridge your tokens over to Solana, and that's including both the SPF on this side and SCP on this side to SCP and what's called D2X on that side. And what we're about to launch in another week or so is a staking contract for D2X over on that side. And essentially what you're going to be able to do is to put your D2X into a staking pool. And when you do that, then you get the entirety of the Solana side SCP claims from storage on the network. The yield that comes across will go to the tokens that are being staked over on Solana. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. If you live in America, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving tomorrow. I think the future looks really bright. I hope you guys think the future looks bright. I'm really grateful to all of you folks for being involved in the project. The project is really vibrant, and essentially we've built the best network on earth. So now it's just our job to go out and make sure that the network is sold and we make it a success and we move forward on it. Thanks everybody for showing up. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.